This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on a Tuesday. I'm in it. Get it on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark. Hard out. Soft Taco Garrigus, all the way from New York City.
By the way, and Tyler just walked in. I was going to say, as I just said to Gary, since I have this thing and Tyler just walked in, if this were a bat, I would use it on Tyler's head right now because there's absolutely no reason in the world why I've got this whole setup and the mic doesn't work.
Yeah, he's swinging around a big mic on an articulating arm, but we'll see if we can get that heated up, although you sound good. All right, so there's... I
have a... Do you realize that the three amigos... Drew's in New York. Susan just texted me. I'm in New York. Where are you? Why are you not here?
I'm in Glendale, California, holding down the fort. Somebody has to keep the lights on.
Some do the heavy lifting, right?
Yeah, so there's updates and...
there's so much going on. But, I know we've been doing a lot of Murdagh recently, but there's just no way... know how that Gary can't play you the Georgia grand jury foreperson. I must for the action.
I wanted to bring that up to you, Mark.
You must.
Well, we have a tight 120 here, so you want to start with that and we can discuss thereafter?
Oh, yeah. We must. We have to. You know what I called this, Adam, on our text chain with Gary? Carolla catnip.
Yeah.
There are indictments recommended, of course. Is it more than 12 people? Is it more than 20 people?
I think if you look at the page numbers of the report, there's about 6 pages in the middle that got cut out. Allow for spacing. It's not a short list.
Not a short list. More, when it comes to 75 witnesses, it's not, I assume, of course, it's not 75 people. Would you characterize it as 20-ish people?
I can't say I counted.
Okay. More than a dozen, though, I think I'd heard you say in another interview.
I believe so.
This is for
That's
the Trump voting thing,
the
right?
name that...
Correct, in Georgia. Right. This, by the way, just so everybody understands, this is not just one of the jurors. This is the foreperson of the jury. It's not the indicting grand jury. They've got one that does kind of informational seeking. This is the foreperson who, by the way, just so you understand, took an oath not to disclose any deliberations or anything of that nature from the grand jury proceedings that took place over a number of months.
Yes. All right.
I believe so. That's probably a good assumption.
The name that everyone wants to know about is former President Trump.
Of course.
Did you recommend charges against Donald Trump?
I really don't want to share something that the judge made a conscious decision not to share. I will tell you that it was a process where we heard his name a lot. We definitely heard a lot about former President Trump, and we definitely discussed him a lot in the room. And I will say that when this list comes out, there are no major plot twists waiting for you.
So, that wasn't even the clip I was thinking of. I was thinking of toward the end when she was like, we better find something, otherwise it's a waste of my time.
And by the way, there was also another one where she talked, I forget who she swore in, because the foreperson she's sworn people in, apparently with a popsicle that she got from the ice cream party that the district attorney's office threw for them. I don't even know where to begin, but Gary, if you've got that where she's talking about that and she's talking about Mike Flynn and General Flynn, and he seems like a nice guy, and and then she says Mark Meadows invoked the Fifth, and then I feel like it was as you said, Adam, it was a waste of time if we didn't do this. Let me just give you a preview of where we're headed with this, if I could, even though I said it was Carolla catnip, because it made my head explode. if you are one of the many people, as she has indicated, a baker's dozen worth of people that they're going to then go to another grand jury, which is the indicting grand jury, to get indictments on. I can guarantee you there's few things in life that are guaranteed besides taxes and death. I'm going to add a third thing, that the defense lawyers are going to make a motion to dismiss or set aside the indictments on the basis of not only prosecutorial misconduct, excessive fraternization for the ice cream parties that they're throwing for the grand jurors, and the grand jurors divulging the conversation, deliberation that took place during the fact-finding portion of this. I don't even know where to begin, but I'll toss it over to you.
Well, CNN would not like that to happen, so why did they put this rube on and talk to her about what's going on inside the courtroom or what her feelings are if it could jeopardize a case and an outcome that CNN wishes for?
Well, that's a very good question. And the fact that it is, I said Corolla catnip for one thing, because watching this is just what a train wreck. But it's also, they can't help themselves, because it's going to be a get, and then it's going to be controversy, and you're going to get clicks. And once again, I will just say, I will bet anyone any amount of money and give you great odds that if and when there are indictments, that this will be front and center of the motions to dismiss of those indictments. I don't know that they'll be successful, but you're going to have an awful lot of litigation surrounding this.
Well, the clip I was looking for, which is, she was on the same show, Gary, I'm
having trouble finding it on the fly, but this is her doing a different media appearance on MSNBC, and I think she says something somewhat similar to what you were alluding to.
Okay.
So let's just check this out. Sorry, I didn't have that in advance.
Personally want to hear from the former president.
I wanted to hear from the former president, but honestly, I kind of wanted to subpoena the former president because I got to swear everybody in. And so I thought it'd be really cool to get 60 seconds with President Trump of me looking at him and being like, do you solemnly swear? And me getting to swear him in. I kind of just thought that would be an awesome moment.
Wow. Yeah, we're heading down some path that I don't know that we can recover from. Yeah, the clip that I'm having Gary look for is on the same interview. I think it was toward the end, but I don't know, Gary. CNN reporter's like, well, what do you want out of this? She's like, well, we got to get him on something, because I don't want to waste my time. So I was thinking of you, Mark, like, can you have people in the jury going, we got to do something? Like, we just got to get him on something because he seems like a bad guy.
They get, so people understand, grand jurors get instructions. Now, Georgia is kind of a peculiar, it's not, and I don't know how in the weeds most people are on grand juries, but grand juries, when on the federal level, at least, when you have a grand jury, they hear evidence, they can indict, they can also theoretically, hypothetically, they can initiate investigations. In this state, in Georgia, as I understand it, they gather evidence, by issuing subpoenas. In this case, there was much litigation about those subpoenas by a number of people. Lindsey Graham, I think, was one. And Mark Meadows, she's revealed, invoked the Fifth. There are instructions that the grand jurors get. The grand jurors are, in most places, have a supervising judge. The defense lawyers are generally not allowed inside of the grand jury proceedings. It's supposed to be secret. There are exceptions to that, obviously. You can't muzzle a witness who goes in front of the grand jury, or muzzle the lawyer for the witness that goes in front of a grand jury, but presumably the prosecution is not supposed to reveal stuff. This is, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this has got to be the Georgia prosecutor's worst nightmare.
Well, aren't they all instructed not to go on news programs and not to discuss this in front of friends and family?
That's normally the case under grand jury secrecy. I think in this specific instance, they're allowed to go out. You can't muzzle somebody in totality, but you're not supposed to get anywhere near deliberations or facts that were elicited, if you will. And that's precisely based on many of the things that I've just read in the last hour. And you notice that she was hesitating and trying to dance around things. She didn't do a very good job of dancing. I mean, I just can't tell you enough how much grist for the mill this will be for the defense.
Well, you were early money on Baldwin sitting down with Stephanopoulos for an interview and how that could come back to bite him in the ass. I do know a little update from that story. And Gary, this thing, the clip I'm talking about was all over Fox yesterday. So maybe that'll help the search. And I thought that was the clip we're alluding to initially, which is her trying to find something to bust him on.
Gary's looking for that. And you mentioned Baldwin. Yesterday, the DA came out and dismissed, Gary and I had talked about this on one of the Beyonds, dismissed the count that really was that put him in jeopardy because it called for, it was basically an enhancement that was enacted after the incident itself that they then tried to retroactively apply to him. That's a huge win for the defense because I think I had mentioned to you, they had to get rid of that count because there was, if convicted, that was the mandatory prison sentence. Interestingly, the DA came out afterwards and did something that I think is probably also a no-no. The DA basically said, maybe Gary can find their statement, but she said something to the effect of, we didn't want to indulge these litigious big city lawyers, so we decided we're going to just dismiss it, ignoring the fact that they filed a charge that didn't exist at the time of the incident, which talk about a double prosecutorial whammy. First of all, you're insulting or you're trying to create an us versus them, these big city lawyers, because it's Spyro, who's from New York, and Luke Nikas, who's from L.A., and then on top of it, you're ignoring the fact that you didn't know enough to take a look at and not file a law that wasn't on the books at the time of the offense.
Where are you coming down on all the January 6th footage being given to Tucker Carlson and how outraged many people are about that, if at all?
Well, this is what I understand. If they're only giving it to Tucker Carlson, I understand that's or they're giving him the first exclusive. I understand it. If you hate Tucker Carlson, that bothers you. But if it's somebody else at MSNBC or CNN who you like and you're giving them the scoop, then apparently that's okay. If you're not giving everybody access to it, I understand the complaint. That's what I get. And I don't know that that's the legitimate complaint. If it was given out and it's footage that is going to be used or not used by the defense. I haven't seen any defense motions yet. I'd like to see if there's any defense motions that says, hey, because this is what I can imagine, speculation, hey, they've had this, or the government has had this material. They didn't turn it over to us. And this is in some parts exculpatory because that's basically the import of much of this that's being released.
Well, the January 6th committee is going to say Tucker Carlson's going to cherry pick excerpts from the footage and then play that, which is all the January 6th committee has been doing for the last 2 years. So that part's sort of comical.
You might remember that you and I discussed this a good 7 months ago, and said, let's go fast forward after the election when the House flips. What's going to happen? They're going to flip not just the House, they're going to flip the script, and you're going to see exactly that. And so once again, it's whose ox is getting gored.
Right, but you're saying if you are counsel for somebody who may be currently incarcerated for January 6th, and they're trying to come down with the full weight of the law on all these people. And there's footage of your client being ushered in by security guard or Capitol policeman, or having a barrier moved out of the way and saying, go ahead, or just milling around the halls, that you as a defense attorney defending that client who's fighting for his freedom, you should have access to that.
That's the definition of Brady material. It's exculpatory. If you're charging somebody of being in a spot where they had no authority to be, trespassing, something along those lines, being, take a look at the elements of the crimes that the January 6 people are being charged. If one of those elements is a breaking, an entering, a trespassing, a no authority, and there are tapes that now show the opposite, or even if your client isn't on there, if you can show temporally, meaning at the same time period, that there are authorities who are waving people in or are ushering people in. And I don't care how many pieces of footage you've got of people bashing in one side of the Capitol. If you've also got on the other side of the Capitol people being ushered in, that's exculpatory, and you need to turn that over. And I know what the response will be. Let me tell you, because I've been there on many occasions. They're going to say, well, we're the executive branch. That's the legislative branch. They had it. We didn't have it. It wasn't in our possession.
Right. So presumably the folks that were defending the January 6 people did not have access to any of this footage.
Presumably, and I will tell you, and I've fought this battle before, they presumably, if they don't get it voluntarily from Fox News, they will subpoena Fox News and demand that material get turned over to them. And they've got a very good argument, because the material that was turned over was the legislative, or came from the legislative. If the executive is wrapping themselves over, when I say the executive, the government, the Department of Justice, is they're wrapping themselves up in this idea that there's a separation of powers. They don't have authority over the legislative. That's fine. The legislative already gave it to Fox News. Fox News needs to turn it over because it's exculpatory, and there isn't a First Amendment right that would trump the Sixth Amendment right to a fair trial.
Wow. Well said. All right. We have 56 seconds of my favorite new gal on CNN from Georgia, but special grand jury for the Trump probe. Emily Kohrs, I guess it would be. All right. This is the part I'm talking about, right, Gary?
I sure hope so.
I sure hope so, too. And I don't know if you've seen this part, Mark, but it's pretty good.
After everything that you've seen, what would your reaction be if the DA decides against bringing any charges after what you've seen?
I will be sad if nothing happens. Like that's about my only request there is for something to happen. I don't necessarily know what it is. I'm not the legal expert. I'm not the judge. I'm not the lawyers, but I will be frustrated if nothing happens. This was too much information, too much of my time, too much of everyone's time, too much of their time. Too much argument in court about getting people to appear before us. There was just too much for this to just be, oh, okay, we're good, bye.
And if it was just a perjury charge, or perjury charges, would that be acceptable to you?
That's fine. I will be happy as long as something happens.
I like that she punctuates with a laugf. So, Mark, is that how trials work?
Let me just ask you something. For years, yes. Adam, for years, when dying a jury, when I'm asking them questions, this is precisely what I ask jurors. Do you understand that you may sit here in this case for 4 to 6 weeks? You may hear all the evidence. Do you understand if you come back with either a hung jury or a not guilty, is that going to disappoint you? Is that going to say it's a waste of your time that you didn't do something to get a conviction? Because if that's your feeling, you don't belong here.
Yeah, she literally just said it was a waste of my time to sit here and listen to all this stuff and have everyone go scot-free.
Yeah. do something. Doing something could be, newsflash, doing something could be we didn't have enough evidence to meet the standards for a subsequent indictment. And by the way, newsflash also, under the Georgia system, you're not an indicting grand jury. So what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah. So is that clip going to be used as well, possibly by the defense team?
That's if I'm defending one of these people who presumably will get indicted, I'm going to lead with that. And and I'll tell you another thing that they may have to do. Mind you, this goes back to way back when in the Oliver North prosecution and some of these other things. If there is substantial dissemination, and I say that with the idea that, just because she's appearing on CNN, given their ratings, I don't know how substantial the dissemination of the information is. I think you get more downloads than CNN's morning show has in an entire week. But if there's somebody on a subsequent grand jury has heard some of these things, or if it has the backlash, so to speak, there's another argument there that it's tainted ab initio for the subsequent indicting grand jury.
There's another case that I was talking to Gary about that I'm not sure if you've heard about, but it was, I guess, a rancher on the Arizona border, maybe an elderly guy, 73, 74.
George Allen Kelly is 73.
And they found a illegal migrant dead on his property, and they charged him with shooting that migrant, which he says he didn't do.
He says that earlier in the day he observed migrants running across his property with large backpacks and AK-47s, and he fired warning shots that he is certain could not have struck these people. And then later in the day, this migrant was discovered, and they believe he's from Nogales based on a voter card that they found on his person.
Did they say someone was trying to break into his house, or did he just say that he discovered this body on his property? But either way, the guy, this is an interesting time we're living in. The guy arrested. He has the elderly wife. He wants to make bail and go. He's scared that now his elderly wife is alone on this ranch with all this illegal traffic going on his land. Then the judge sets the bail at $1 million, and then they start a GoFundMe page to raise the bail, and then GoFundMe takes it down because I don't know why everything is politicized, but it all just is now. So I don't know if this guy's out yet, and I don't know what the story was. It's A, he didn't shoot anybody, or B, maybe there was some self-defense here, but C, doesn't seem like the old guy should be rotting in jail.
Apparently, GoFundMe's terms of service explicitly prohibit campaigns that raise money to cover the legal defense of anyone formerly charged with an alleged violent crime. That's a direct quote from GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what does legal defense, I guess, is going to entail the bail, where we saw the presumption of innocence last time I looked, except on Twitter and in other social media schools. The presumption of innocence and somebody wanting to raise bail when they're presumed innocent haven't gone through a probable cause proceeding. You just have to wonder to yourself, have we really reached that stage where you just you hear a story, somebody gets arrested, and that's it? You're not entitled to anything?
Well, and also, did they take down the GoFundMe pages for anyone who got arrested for violent crime during the BLM protest? And I'm going to go with no on trying to raise that bail. So I think there's some politics involved with this one. But again, I'm not sure why we have to be on the side of the illegals that are breaking into the country politically. But this guy, there's some sort of problem we have with people defending themselves and defending their land. And I don't know, Gary, is he out by now?
Doesn't seem like it.
Still in there. And, I don't know if $1 million is high. If it seems, I mean, I know you went through this with Kane, right?
Yeah, I did. And, but,
You had no bail.
Yeah, we had no bail with Kane. I was begging for $1 million. We finally got $1 million, and he bailed out. And in California, in Los Angeles County, pre-cash bail or no cash bail, they had a bail schedule in LA County, and murder was presumptively $1 million. And that, I used to laugh because other counties like Orange County, you get a discount. Back then, the bail schedule for murder in Orange County was only $250. That's why Gary lives down there. And you could go to other places, and attempted murder would be no bail. So it's quite a system we have.
So the Murdagh trial, any bow or button we want to put on that?
There's been quite a bit on that. I'd love to. Gary's got a couple of video snippets, right, Gary?
Yeah, I do. We had a lot of testimony out of the surviving son, Buster, as well.
By the way, I'll set this up too. Buster, as Gary said, is the surviving son. Buster has gotten quite a bit of backlash, if you can believe that. I mean, his mother and his brother have been killed. His dad is basically on trial for their murder. Not only that, but also is facing the rest of his life in prison for a series of embezzlements, right? So you would think that there would be some empathy towards this young man, and he's been excoriated for sitting behind, if you can believe it, his father and supporting his father during the trial. Then people were claiming that when one of the witnesses testified, he had his middle finger to his mouth, and they were saying he was flipping off, if you will, the particular witness. God forbid, when he got on the stand, Twitter erupted yesterday. Gary will play some of it, because the prosecution, I think, rightfully did not go after him. I mean, they had the common sense to understand that this guy is a victim in every sense of the word, and people were just excoriating the prosecution over that.
Buster, when did you first find out that your mom and brother were murdered?
My dad called me. I can't remember the exact time, but it was later. And he called me on the phone. He asked me if I was sitting down, and I was like, yeah. And then he sounded odd, and then he told me that my mom and brother had been shot.
And what'd you do?
Well, Brooklyn, my girlfriend, was with me, and I think she heard she could hear my conversation kind of over the phone, and so she just started packing stuff, and I kind of just sat there for a minute, and I was in shock. But eventually we got our stuff together and drove down to Moselle.
Well, so the prosecution doesn't want to drill down on this guy because you're going to get sympathy for him.
I mean, just what interest would be vindicated? And people, you should see some of the clown squad that is sitting and excoriating. I mean, who am I to defend the prosecution? But they played it right, and I sorry if this son presumes innocence of his father and is supportive of his father. I mean, it's just mind-boggling me. By the way, going back to a couple of episodes ago, when we were playing that video of they did him. What was the expression?
They shit him up.
Shit him up, yeah. They shit him up. This kid, there was something similar to talking about what they did, and by the way, interestingly, the one thing that and we talked about this, Adam, when the prosecution's case, they put on somebody who said there were two different guns that each.
Mm-hmm. Right, we saw that.
Right. Now, the defense put on a witness that testified that whoever shot was shooting at a height of 5'2", and the defendant, Alex Murdagh, is 6'4", substantially more. So either was kneeling or it was somebody shorter. But the fact remains, what nobody has explained to me, and what I would be all over if I was defending, is how in the world and why hasn't the prosecution explained why there's two guns, why the trajectory of the bullets were going on an upward trajectory, and why if somebody was kneeling, why were they kneeling at the point, and why were the two victims facing the shooter as opposed to one of them either turning, running, or trying to flee. None of that makes sense to me.
Well, all stuff we'll get to in subsequent episodes. For now, you can see me March 9th, Las Vegas at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club. I'll be up there. And then Naples, Florida, coming up off the hook. That'll be March 24th and 25th. Maybe Ricardo will come out, make the pilgrimage. Mark, what do you got?
I've got, if you're in New York City, go down to Dirty Taco at Grand Central or Prova Pizzeria. If you're in Times Square, go by Love Pizza. And if you're in L.A., take a stop by LAX for Engine Company 28 or in downtown L.A.
So, till next time, Adam Carolla for Mark, Hard Out, Soft Taco, Garrigus, saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.